Hello friends, we are covering fourth chapter and this is the part 5. Hierarchical spaces yield different concepts. Interestingly, it is this barbaric aspect of civilization that makes Gandhi more self-reflective and therefore critical about his own tradition and Ambedkar his conscience keeper. I am going to argue that it is this division of space between sacred and profane that play a more important role in shaping Gandhi's and Ambedkar's thought in 20th century India. Although both Gandhi and Ambedkar are critical of tradition codes with different degree of emphasis, this critique of tradition does not lead to the production of the same set of categories. For example, in Gandhi, it is the category of self-rule, both morally and politically, that become a sovereign viewpoint, and in Ambedkar, it is the category of self-respect and social justice that acquire central importance. Ambedkar conceptualization also indicate the limit of Gandhian imagination. The main argument in this chapter is built around the notion of experience, which finds its expression in cultural construction of space by social and political forces. I therefore continue to argue that it is the achar practice and anubhava experience mostly of the others in Gandhi and the authentic anubhava in Ambedkar that have formative impact on their respective thought. Gandhi's effort to identify with others' experience lead him to adopt different instrumentalities of thought. For example, Gandhi's identification with untouchable forces him to generate moral category like seva, selfless public service. For example, Gandhi uses these moral and hence non-cognitive categories such as seva, trustship, care, and cooperation to produce historical conjuncture. These categories acquire their validity from the political practice of people. The production and reproduction of experience leads to an ontological wound in Ambedkar, and this in effect leads Ambedkar to develop an entirely different set of categories such as self-respect, social justice, and egalitarianism. In Ambedkar, it is the category of Anubhava, the that become the primary epistemological source for producing a different set of categories of alternative imagination and the politics of emancipation. Thus, in Ambedkar's thought, unlike in Gandhi's, we find a constellation of interesting categories: Manuski, self-respect; Manakhandana, Manakhandana, humiliation; Puraskrut, harmonious; Bahishkrut, socially ostracized; Adhikar, rights; Seva, service; Shram, labor; Vettavegari, unpaid labor; and finally social justice, injustice. Out of these sets of category that constitutes his thought, I am going to focus only three concepts: social justice, self-respect, and nation. I have selected these three concepts as they offer a new reading of space and experience and vice versa. Moreover, these are concepts that are determined by the notion of experience, which itself is embedded in socio-culturally constituted spaces. In the following section, I would like to elaborate on the interrelationship between the concept of social justice, self-respect, and the nation and the experiential space. Ambedkar saw a great theoretical as well as political promise in the emergence of modern social space that was unfolding due to the pressure of colonial modernity. Colonial modernity, despite its limitation, surely involved rather different enabling processes of modernization, industrialization, urbanization, and modern education that encourage the lead to question the social forces that produce their degrading experience for them. Ambedkar, along with other modernists, including Marx, believed that these spaces would produce a new experience for the untouchable where they would realize a genuine sense of justice and equal treatment once the hierarchical spaces were sterilized and streamlined into secular hierarchy based on capacity rather than caste. Thus, from Ambedkar's perspective, it is the restructuring of opportunity spaces that involve the possibility of restoring dignity to the elites and securing justice that was to be defined primarily in terms of getting a fair chance to gain a new and liberating experience. Ambedkar also thought that, along with other modernizing processes, urbanization would offer the untouchables a much needed opportunity to walk out from the constraining dark hole. According to Ambedkar's view, the village system based on caste was a dark hole, as we have already noted earlier. In face-to-face situation, in the traditional village setting, the Prakash social or cultural gauge did not fail to size up the untouchables as moving moral plague. Ambedkar thought urbanization would liberate the untouchable from quarantine spaces. He believed that urbanization would positively destroy these face-to-face social interaction and make people stranger to each other. The option of anonymity, ironically, was considered desirable because it would offer untouchables a fair chance to become placeless individuals who then would organize their social protocols with others on an equal basis. However, the patterns of urbanization, even during his own time, did not fulfill Ambedkar's dream, as he landed up in the same Maharwada, the lead dwelling place that he had left behind in the village. The social morphology of the villages was replicated even in most of the urban cities of India, including Bombay. The Bombay Development Department, cement chawl tenement where Ambedkar and his family live was occupied by the untouchables who had come from Konkan area of Maharashtra. These localities and even the labor chawl came to be organized around caste and even subcaste lines, not only in Mumbai but in many places such as Kanpur. As mentioned in the previous section, according to Susan Bailey, the process of urbanization rigidified the caste boundary more than before. Guptu, in her study of Kanpur, showed that the untouchable who migrated from rural Uttar Pradesh to Kanpur somehow were pushed into socially segregated ghettos, which is were no different from the secluded settlement that they had left behind in their villages. Those untouchable who migrated to other cities in colonial India, such as Bombay, also were pushed into slums such as Dharavi or the Matunga labor camps. These slums in Malabar Hill, a posh elite colony in Bombay, were perceived to be worse than a garbage depot. The elite from Malabar Hill did not distinguish untouchable from physical dirt. In their perception, untouchables were mobile dirt, and dirt was mobile untouchability. This sense of repulsion was so deep in elite perception that it denied any legitimate advantage of odor to a scented body from the slum. Thus, the continuous production and the reproduction of mobile dirt suggest a spatial dimension of ontology. The untouchable's image as walking dirt was chained to his or her physical association and experience of being a walking dirt, which of course was given to him or her, was sustained through the static nature of the space. Ambedkar, along with the other untouchable, was also depository of this static experience of space. It was static in the sense that the urban space, like village, was equally hostile to the dignity of untouchables, as the latter could not appear in public without a sense of shame. The urban upper caste bodies, with their mind stuffed with a deep sense of untouchability, did not offer the untouchables any moral advantage that would make them feel that there is more to the walking dirt and that there is more to the body that exceeded beyond these static spaces. My own study of early 20th century Bombay also show that as a result of the political economy of urban capital as well as colonial capital, the working class locality in the Lal Bagh and Parel area came to be organized around caste line. Thus, the colonial and local capital did not show any foresight in restructuring the urban spaces toward a more egalitarian social morphology. In fact, one finds continuity of caste rights into social space. The chawl and the section of textile mills. These urban spaces became the major sources of articulation of the deep sense of repulsion and revulsion by upper caste, continuous denial of generic identity to untouchables and to Ambedkar was blatantly demonstrated by the middle caste workers, the Marathas, in textile mills in Bombay during the early 1930s. The Maratha worker opposed the entry of untouchable worker into the weaving section of these mills, as is well documented by Ambedkar himself. If the untouchable worker had traditional skill, why did the Maratha or Kunbi oppose their entry into weaving section? First, the Maratha also could not have tolerated a Mahar becoming culturally superior to them in the new setting. On the contrary, the Maratha textile worker desired that the Mahar remain culturally inferior to himself or herself, as was the case in the past. Ambedkar, in this case, treated untouchability as an ideology that was used by the upper caste worker to protect their material interest. This analytical ability of Ambedkar to control a significant reference point has often been ignored by scholars who see untouchability as the only reality. These scholars see too much of untouchability in this opposition. Certainly, untouchability was one of the main reasons, but there were other material and cultural reasons behind this opposition. First, the Marathas, who according to some studies were relatively few in number compared to the Dheds. Dheds are the Mahar in Bombay and Bunkars in Gujarat. Always felt insecure that they would be further marginalized by the Dheds, who were almost double the numbers of the Marathas, who were around 3,000 in 1930s. This fear was further compounded by the fact that compared to the Dheds, the Marathas did not have past experience in weaving. The traditional skill in weaving is also demonstrated. Family names such as Bunkar that the Dalit from Gujarat seems to have adopted. In Hindi, Bunkar means weaver. The Mahar and Bunkar, like other services caste, did develop skill in weaving in order to cater to the social needs of the upper caste. In fact, they were forced to weave cloth of some quality for their own use. Their stigma of untouchability barred them from either buying a new cloth or selling new cloth. The traditional weaver from other backward caste wove cloth for the so-called forward caste. Moreover, according to the dictates of Manu, they were not allowed to wear new garment made by traditional weavers from the service caste. This social condition forced the untouchable to use either a cast-off garment of their feudal lords or weave cloth for themselves. Most of the untouchables, including their women in some parts of India, were not allowed to wear upper garments. Ever male Dalit use only the lower garments. Actually, the half-clad Gandhi look more like untouchable than peasant. The middle caste mill workers, particularly the Marathas, found perpetuation of untouchability an effective force in achieving their desired end. What was their goal? Their goal was to use tradition to gain advantage in modernity, or conversely, they wanted to recover in tradition the confidence that they were likely to lose in modernity that was available to the Mahars. Finally, the Maratha worker never wanted competition, particularly from untouchables. In the weaving section, which was a relatively well-paid section of textile mills, in this regard, it is also interesting to note that the capitalist and the colonial state did not show any strong interest in shunting the caste-like social force out of the textile mills. In fact, they very actively promoted harmony between the functional hierarchy of industrial labor organizations and the social hierarchies, thus achieving a perfect blend of tradition and modernity. All these related factors led to the Maratha to oppose the untouchable on a traditional ground and not on a rational modern grounds, that is to say, financial space, of which Manu Goswami is so critical for its having a saturating impact on the local Tesi, kept easy pace with the social space that permeated caste. The share market in Bombay did not accommodate or appreciate Ambedkar's skill and expertise. He was almost thrown out of this market because he was untouchable. One of the Bombay-based Gujarati newspaper revealed his caste. The role of print media in India was significant not in terms of imagining the nation. 62. Sorry, Professor Benedict Anderson, the caste system in India has abused your concept, but in consolidating the hold of caste over financial spaces. The relevant question is what implication does this overlap between the financial and social space have for the emergence of normative concepts such as social justice and self-respect, particularly in the social thought of Ambedkar. We'll cover in next part. Thank you.